Tennessee wins 11 games last year, but let's talk regular season because Caleb hates him some Orange Bowl, and I understand that. So let's say 10 wins in the regular season, which that's typically what I go to anyway. So Tennessee has recruiting momentum. They're able to get the Arian Carters and the Ethan Davises that would have gone somewhere else just a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago. They have that recruiting momentum. You can look at their recruiting rankings if you want to pull those up and tell me where they stand now. I would appreciate that, Caleb, and how many 4 and 5 stars they have. So clearly there's momentum with the program. And clearly that momentum is strong enough to withstand a Florida loss. I don't think anybody's saying Josh Heupel is not the guy. As a matter of fact, I think you still have a fantastic coach. But how many wins does Tennessee need to have to keep the momentum going? Obviously, 10 would still do it, and that would be a monumental win considering their quarterback issues and the injuries that they have had, which have been just to two of the worst players that you could have injured. And I'll leave it at this. I think Tennessee could win as few as 8 games and still have momentum if the quarterback play gets better. Either my way, Nico, or your way, Joe steps up to the plate. I think the concern is if Tennessee slips to 7 wins and the quarterback play is really, really bad. Because then some of the skilled position players aren't going to want to come. Your defense is not going to look good, and it's this vertical attacking defense, and you're not going to have that. So I say that Tennessee can still have momentum and really unaffected momentum by 8 wins and a strong close, which the schedule would open that possibility, a strong close of quarterback play. You?
I think 8 wins. I'm with you. I think 8 wins could keep Tennessee's momentum. But I think to be safe, they need to be 9-3. I think they need to win every game the rest of the way outside of Alabama and Georgia. I'm just going to be honest with you. I think they need to win every other game the rest of the way. And that includes part of this is who they beat, right, Dave? A lot of this is who you beat, because last year when Tennessee lost to South Carolina, that wrecked them on the recruiting trail. So I'm just going to say this now. Tennessee has to beat South Carolina next week. I don't care what they do the rest of the year. They can't lose to South Carolina a second year in a row. That will derail momentum like nobody's business. Tennessee, this is the most something to gain, most to lose game Josh Heupel's ever coached in his career at Tennessee is next week against South Carolina. If they don't win that game, they're in big trouble because South Carolina already has some recruiting momentum against Tennessee. So they have to beat South Carolina. I still think they should beat Texas A&M because Texas A&M is going to start coming apart at the seams. So the question becomes Alabama, Georgia losses. Can they maintain against Missouri and Kentucky on the road? I think they got to beat both of those teams. I think they need to go 9-3, but I think they can withstand 8-4, but they cannot withstand losing to South Carolina. Period. End of story.
So yours is not just who they lose to. Yours is not just number of wins. It's who they lose to, right?
Yes, it's who they lose to. They can't afford losing to South Carolina.
Wow. I hadn't really placed it like that. So if they lose to, I said 8 wins. Can I change mine? Can I change it to 9? So if they lose to Florida with quarterback issues, they lose to Alabama on the road, and they lose to the defending national champion, Caleb, I want to say 9. I'm going to change my answer to 9. If they were to lose those 3 games, you don't want to lose to the big 3, but I would say that it would take 9 because 8 would involve a South Carolina, a Missouri, somebody else.
Okay. So you think a Missouri or Kentucky loss would be too devastating on the road this year, given the fact that both are top 25 caliber teams looking at it right now?
I'm going to say if it's 9 and they lose to Florida, Alabama, and Georgia, the recruiting momentum and all the momentum of the program is perfectly fine. I'm going to say if it's Florida, Georgia, and Missouri or Vanderbilt at the end of the year, then you've got a a problem. But I will say this, from covering recruiting for 20 years, kids don't usually put too much on one game. But I'm going to stick at 9 if I can.
Okay, so we're both at 9-3. I'm with you. I think 9-3 is where you need to be. And for the record, Clemson went 9-3 in 2014 in the bridge year. And I keep comparing this year to Clemson's 2014 year, which was a bridge year. And Clemson did go 9-3 that year. I do think, to your point, Dave, I do think Deshaun Watson actually did finish the season that year at Clemson, didn't he? Didn't he end up taking the starting job from Cole Stout? I could be wrong on that. Or did Cole Stout get hurt?
I think so. I think they kind of shuffled back and forth for a second.
I think they did too. You're right. And so maybe that does happen. But yeah, I think 9-3 is where they need to be. Look, South Carolina and Texas A&M is the first step. I think they should be Texas A&M, but they got to go all in on South Carolina. Heupel needs to literally pull out everything he's got because you can't lose to South Carolina. You just can't. And Missouri and Kentucky, those are going to be tougher because one, Missouri won't because they don't really have a fan base. But I will say, Dave, Kroger Field can get loud at night when they're playing a big time team and Kentucky's playing well. It can actually be tough place to play.
Yeah, but also Kentucky can self-check out. The Kroger thing that I did there.
Yes, well played.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to say this.
Anyway.
Kentucky probably has. You don't think about it because they're a basketball school, but they've got one of the best fan bases in the SEC. I mean, they show up for football games, and they are loud and raucous.
Totally. Considering wins and losses, I think South Carolina is the best fan base. Mm-hmm. I think Kentucky might be second, and I'd have Auburn somewhere in there because they don't win a lot of championships, but that's one of the loudest places to play. I will tell you, I was blown away. No, but I think Kentucky's very impressive. The premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD and Delta products. Please go to hemphousechat.com, hemphousechat.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. That's the promo code HOOKED. But when I look at this Tennessee football team, do I think they'll win 9 games? I do, because an Alabama win with the problems they're having wouldn't surprise me. And I think they'll be favored in the rest of their games other than Georgia, won't they?
Yeah, I think so. Let's also put this out there. You know this about being about spoiled fan bases, Dave. Alabama may not be the road game people think it is. If Alabama loses another game, I think their new student body has expectations so high, apathy may creep in for them if they're not in a playoff race because they've been. I can't believe I'm saying that it's Alabama, but
no, you're right. It happened at Tennessee it happened at Florida when they were just knocking on the door of championships instead of winning championships. Like Tennessee, I thought there was I still remember, and we're going to visit with Philip Fulmer, our Celebrate 98 series, but I still remember one thing. It's kind of what I'm going to lead with, and we were going to do that last night, but it's going to be Friday with Fred White, and it's brought to you by Tennessee Cider Company. But I still remember him saying that his wife looked up at him when he's hoisting the national championship trophy, and he goes, she said, well, you've done it now, because if you don't do this every year, they're not going to be happy. And she was exactly right. So in 2000, they started to get, and then 2001, you lose the SEC championship game when you should have won it. They're like, oh my gosh. And then it really, went off the rails. Same thing for Steve Spurrier, who left Gainesville saying 10 wins just isn't enough. So could I see that happening in Alabama? Yes. As a matter of fact, I will tell you that will happen at Alabama. Maybe not this year, but whenever Nick Saban retires, they're not just going to go pick up another Nick Saban. They might pick up a Mike Shula, or they might pick up, one of the goofballs that they had between Stallings and Saban. And I
mean, it actually was before Stallings because they had like Bill Curry and
Stallings won a championship.
That's true, but basically that they kept looking for Bear Bryant disciples. There was that joke at the time, how many Alabama fans does it take to change a light bulb? And it was one, but it takes 10 others to sit around and talk about how the Bear would have changed the light bulb. And I mean, that was basically Alabama coaching hires. It was, he's got some Bear Bryant ties. So
I've never heard that joke, but it makes me smile. It makes me smile.
It's funny you bring up. I wanted to mention the Fulmer thing. You know what really stood out with me with that? So the '98 national title Tennessee wins. They go back to the Fiesta Bowl in '99. Do you remember how much Nebraska fans just punked Tennessee fans at that game? Like Nebraska had 3/4 of the stadium at the Fiesta Bowl in '99.
Yeah,
Tennessee fans just didn't. They didn't. Yeah, Tennessee fans didn't bother to show up. And
well,
a lot
it
of Tennessee.
It was the same trip when you played for the. It would have been the 2000 Fiesta Bowl, but 99 season. But I know because I saw Billy Idol at Y2K at December the 31st, 1999 at 11:59. But it was the same trip for a lesser game. That's the one bowl trip I gave Tennessee a complete pass on. I mean, you played for national championship in the same area. It's an expensive trip. If you've ever been to Phoenix, you better get your ATM card out fast.
You do realize that in 2001, though, is why Tennessee, after losing to LSU, was stuck going to the Citrus Bowl when Florida got the BCS invite. Even though Tennessee beat Florida and they both had 2 losses, the Orange Bowl was like, yeah, Tennessee didn't fill the stadium in the Fiesta Bowl, so we're going to give this to Florida. That happened because Tennessee fans didn't bother to show up in Arizona.
No, you're absolutely right. And, I just think that I think 9's your magic number. No matter how you get to 9, the momentum doesn't stop, especially if you have quarterback issues. But it seems like everybody has quarterback issues. So I'm not ruling out a possible upset of Alabama or Georgia
in November.
Quarterback issues. But now somebody else says, somebody's kind of calling you out a little bit here. It's Tom says, John C. That's what everyone said about us going to Florida last weekend. You think for one second that Alabama is not going to decimate us the way we're playing? Yes, the way they were playing Saturday, yes. But I don't know that they're going to be playing that way in the 3rd Saturday in October.
Yeah, and Florida also is probably a little more appreciative of what could be possible now than Alabama is, because Florida hasn't been winning national championships 10, 12 years in a row. Look, that derails expectations. I mean, Billy Donovan couldn't fill a 10,000-seat arena after his 2nd national title because Florida was just never able to rematch what they did there. I mean, that's natural. That's what happens. I will say I underestimated Florida fans last week, just like I underestimated Georgia fans last year. I got to stop doing that. You bring up South Carolina. South Carolina fans didn't cost Tennessee that game because the offense was moving the ball fine. It was just a defensive collapse. But
there were a lot of things that went in the South Carolina game. Like you remove the Clemson Orange Bowl. I almost removed the Clemson game from how I view last year. I'm sorry, the South Carolina game from how I view last year because of the off-field issues leading into the game. I mean, it's a lack of maturity. I still judge the team off that. But as far as their play, I don't think they were suddenly figured out in any stretch of the imagination. And I'm not sure that if Hendon Hooker doesn't stay healthy and doesn't go down with the ACL tear, that they don't make a game of that.
I was certain they were still going to come back 3 scores in the 4th quarter. But yeah, I agree. I think so. 9 wins, I think is fair. Missouri and Kentucky is going to be tough. But, not Missouri has no fans, but you just never know what you're going to get with that program. But they should, Tennessee and Kentucky is like Tennessee and Florida, but the reverse. Tennessee doesn't lose to Kentucky.